Hello, and welcome back to MysHistory. I'm Rhonda, and this is where I talk about odd or unsolved historical mysteries. And if that sounds like something that you might be interested in, then please consider subscribing. I hope you have all been well. This week, let's take it back to the 1800s. I realize we were in the 1500s before, but I got a thing for like way old. It's cool. We're going to talk about Karolina Olsson, the Sleeping Beauty of Okno. We are all familiar with the fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty, who pricked her finger on a spindle and then fell into a deep sleep until her Prince Charming came along and kissed her back to life again. Isn't that true love's first kiss or something? Am I the only one that was unaffected by fairy tales? I mean, they were fun stories. But I never grew up thinking that one day my Prince Charming was going to come and kiss me and we were going to go live in a magical world full of sunshine and unicorns farting rainbows. Is this me? Can't be. Anyway, Karolina Olsson. She was born October 29th, 1861 in Okno, Sweden. She was the second of 5 children, 4 brothers. Okno is just off of Sweden's eastern coast in the Baltic Sea. Her family was described as simple, deeply religious, and prone to believing in witchcraft and other things that go bump in the night. As the only girl, Karolina would stay home to help her mother with household chores that needed to be done while tending to a larger family. Things like laundry, cleaning, cooking, and mending. It said that she would learn to read and write in between her chores. Sometime in 1875, Karolina would be enrolled in a nearby school, and it is believed that this was to be to comply with the requirement of the Lutheran Church that she learn her catechism. At the age of 14, on February 18th, 1876, Karolina was crossing a frozen river on her way home, and she would slip on the ice. Some say she fell through the ice and nearly drowned. Other sources say she tripped and hit her head on the ice, which knocked a tooth loose and resulted in a toothache. Regardless of which occurred, she would make it safely to her family home. Upon arrival home, her father would look her over and notice that despite some scrapes and some bruising, she appeared fine otherwise. She would continue with her normal routine until her toothache got worse, and then she started to suffer from painful headaches, and this was said to have been out of the ordinary for her and her parents. Her parents thought that it was due to witchcraft. Isn't it always? And so they sent her to lie down. Karolina would do as her parents said and go to bed, and all figured that they would see how she felt the next morning. However, Karolina would not wake up the next morning. Due to her family's isolated location and the fact that her father was a fisherman with no ability to afford a doctor, the family would rely on the advice of their friends and the town's midwife to care for Karolina. They would try various methods to wake her up, including a hot flame across her skin and pricking her with needles, including underneath her fingernails. Kind of like jabbing you in the cuticle too, right? Oof. Oh. Her mother would force feed her 2 glasses of milk each day and some sugar water. her mother would comb her hair and just in general care for her sleeping daughter, who never seemed to wake up. Eventually, the neighbors would pool some money together to pay for a doctor to come and visit the family. He, too, was unable to awaken Karolina from her slumber and told the family that she must be in some sort of coma. Really? You think? The doctor would visit for about a year, and he would eventually write to the editor of a medical journal to ask for help and or a cure from other medical professionals. Over the years, doctors would visit the family home and note that Karolina's hair, fingernails, and toenails did not appear to grow, nor did it appear that she had lost any weight despite only surviving on 2 glasses of milk and some sugar water each day. Doctors would say that despite her current state, she was in surprisingly good shape. The family would report that Karolina would sometimes sit up and, quote, mumble prayers that she had learned by rote in childhood. Dr. Johann Emil Blada, I don't think I'm saying that right, would visit, and he thought that her sleeping state was the result of some sort of hysteria. So for this reason, in July of 1892, remember, she fell asleep in 1876, Karolina would be hospitalized at Oskirchem, where she would receive electroconvulsive therapy. This would not change her sleeping state, and as a result, on August 2nd, 1892, she would be released from the hospital back to her home, with the hospital stating that her diagnosis was dementia paralytica, also known as general paralysis of the insane and classified as an organic mental disorder. It is caused by the chronic meningoencephalitis, which leads to cerebral atrophy in late-stage syphilis. There's little to no evidence that suggests that this is the illness from which Karolina suffered, and she would not be examined by a doctor again until she awoke. Karolina's mother would pass away in 1904, and a full-time caregiver was then hired to come in and continue to care for her. This caregiver would note that Karolina's hair always seemed clean, but never grew. However, she would also notice that sometimes candies that she would leave in Karolina's room would go missing when the caregiver left the room and then returned, leading the caregiver to doubt Karolina's state. It was witchcraft. Karolina would continue in her state of slumber, and it was reported that she did not seem to be aging normally and actually appeared younger, as if her metabolism had slowed down completely. Is that the fountain of youth? Is that what we have to do? Sleep for a really long time?
I don't think I could do that.
When one of Karolina's brothers passed away, the nurse would state that Karolina cried but remained in her coma-like state. It was further reported that any food left by her bed would remain untouched, and the nurse/maid would never hear her speaking. So it was 1876 when Karolina went to bed and never woke up. On April 3rd, 1908, after 32 years of sleeping, Karolina finally woke up. There is no indication that a prince rode up on a white steed and kissed her awake. The maid would find her crying and jumping on the floor. Her surviving brothers would arrive to see her, but it was said that she did not recognize them. She would be described as thin and pale. Over the next few days, she remained quiet and is said to have had an almost painful reaction to sunlight. She was a vampire. She was a vampire. She would eventually start to speak, but it was difficult. It said that she did not remember anything since falling into her coma-like state, save for half-remembered dreams and nightmares. Doctors would examine her and note that despite being bedridden for decades, she didn't seem to have any real side effects. Witchcraft. At the time that Karolina awoke, she was in her 40s, but she appeared to be in her 20s. She would be examined by psychologists and noted to be in full control of all her mental cognitive abilities, but was having difficulty adjusting to the new world around her. Shocking. Due to the fact that she seemed to be in such decent health and in charge of her mental faculties, there were those who didn't believe that she had been asleep for 3 decades. Some were convinced that it was all a lie and an attempt by her family to keep her hidden away from the rest of the world. It was believed that she did wake up, but she was seriously ill and would remain in her sleep state, refusing to eat in an attempt to gain sympathy. It was further suspected that her mother helped hide this and kept the secret that Karolina was no longer sleeping. Adding to this theory that she was never asleep really for 32 years was the fact that she always seemed well-groomed, which could be due to the fact that, her mother doted on her sleeping child the whole time, kept her well clean. Or, as one theory goes, it could be that Karolina and her mother, while alone in the family cottage, Karolina would come out and eat and chat with her mother until they heard someone approaching, at which time Karolina would go back to bed. But that doesn't explain why, if they were jabbing her with needles underneath her fingernails, she didn't react.
But did they continue that throughout the 30 years that she was in a coma?
I don't know. It's a really old story. I didn't get those details.
I understand.
It's kind of hard to find. I'm sure there's no records. It was 1876 for crying out loud. Another theory was that perhaps Karolina did not have an accident at all on the ice, but that she was the victim of some sort of severe abuse, perhaps by many people, an event so traumatic that it destroyed her mental health, thus causing her to want to shut out the world and not engage in it. Despite her ordeal, it's said that Karolina would go on to lead a normal life until her death in 1950 at the age of 88 from an intracranial hemorrhage. Have you ever heard of this case? Karolina Olsson, the Sleeping Beauty of Okno? I have my own theory. What if Karolina did in fact pass away before doctors were able to go there to visit? And in the meantime, her parents had another daughter and had left her laying in the bed all those years. This could account for why she appeared younger than her actual age. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. And until next time, stay safe out there. This crazy world, apparently full of witchcraft.